She is standing on the biggest court of her career. Thousands of fans on their feet. Cameras flashing everywhere you look. And for 1 second, this looks exactly like the peak of a dream. But here is what almost nobody in that crowd actually knows. Her body should not be out here right now. Not tonight, not like this, 4 days. That is it. That is all the time Alex Eala has had between the single most brutal match of her life and this exact moment, under the Toronto lights. 4 days between a rain-soaked, gut-wrenching final that drained everything she had, and a sold-out center court crowd chanting her name. Most athletes need a full week just to feel human again after a match like that one. She got 4 days. And instead of resting, she kept playing. Singles one night, doubles the very next. Barely a breath in between. So here is the question you should be asking right now. How is she still standing? Is this what real dedication looks like? Is this the exact thing that separates a champion from everybody else on tour? Or is this the beginning of the kind of story commentators tell years later, shaking their heads, saying we all saw it coming and nobody stopped it? Watch her closely in these matches and you will start to notice something. Her legs move just a fraction slower between points now. Her breathing takes a beat longer to settle before she serves. But her eyes never change. Locked in. Almost too locked in. Like she is running on something that has nothing to do with physical energy at all. Fans online have already picked up on it. The comments are piling up under every clip of her matches. People asking if she is pushing herself too far. People genuinely worried that this incredible comeback story is about to turn into something painful to watch. And honestly, nobody outside her own team knows the real answer yet. Not the commentators calling the match, not the fans packed into that arena, not even the reporters writing about her career this very week. Here is what we do know, though. 4 days ago, she was somewhere completely different. Somewhere far from a roaring stadium and a standing ovation. Somewhere that makes this whole scene even harder to explain. To understand why she is still out there fighting, we have to rewind all the way back to where this really started. 4 days ago, Alex Eala was not thinking about Toronto at all. She was standing on a court in Washington, down a set, watching storm clouds roll in over what was about to become the biggest match of her entire life. Actually, let's rewind even further. Because to really understand why this moment hits so hard, you need to know who this 21-year-old is. Alex Eala grew up training inside the Rafa Nadal Academy in Spain. Not a summer camp, not a visit. She lived there, trained there, year after year, on the very same courts, under the very same philosophy that helped shape one of the greatest athletes tennis has ever seen. That kind of environment does not just teach you a better forehand, it builds something deeper. A mindset that simply refuses to quit, even when quitting would be the easiest thing in the world to do. For years, she was the name tennis insiders kept whispering about behind the scene. A junior Grand Slam champion, a player everyone swore would break through eventually. But eventually is a dangerous word in professional sports. Sometimes it means next year. Sometimes it means never. Then in 2025, everything shifted. She fought her way to the quarterfinals of the Miami Open, a WTA 1000 event, taking down opponents ranked inside the top 25. That was the moment casual fans finally sat up and paid attention. But even after all of that, she still had 0 tour-level singles titles to her name. 0. After the Academy, after the junior titles, after Miami. Still 0. That changed in Washington. The final against Jessica Pegula was supposed to be her statement match. Instead, it turned into a full-blown survival test. Eala dropped the first set 4-6. Then the rain came, delaying the match overnight and forcing her to sit alone with that scoreline for hours, unable to do anything but think about it, before finally returning to finish what she started. Just picture that for a second. You are one match away from making history. You are losing, and then the sky opens up and steals your momentum completely, forcing you to wait until the next day to try again. She came back out and ran through the next 2 sets, 6-4, and then a total 6-0 collapse from her opponent. A complete takeover. That win made her the first Filipina in history to capture a WTA singles title. 21 years old. Top 20 inches the world for the very first time ever. A nation of over 100 million people suddenly had a tennis star of their very own to hold on to. This is not just a great week for one athlete. This is an entire country watching someone rewrite what is possible for them. And that is exactly why what happened next matters so much. Because instead of taking that moment to breathe, to celebrate, to let her body finally heal from the most demanding match of her life, she got on a plane straight to Toronto. If you are new here and you want to understand how someone goes from unknown to unstoppable in the span of one single season, stick with us. Because this story is only just getting started, and there is a piece of it most people watching her right now have not connected yet. What came next in Toronto would push her further than anyone could have expected. And it starts with a schedule that honestly should never have been possible. No days off, no recovery window at all. 48 hours after lifting that trophy in Washington, Alex Eala had to walk right back onto the biggest stage the Canadian Open had to offer. And that was only the beginning of what her body would have to survive that week. Let's actually walk through her schedule, because the numbers here tell a story words alone cannot. Monday, she wins the Washington final in 3 brutal sets, a match stretched out by an overnight rain delay and capped off by a complete third-set collapse from her opponent, a collapse that only happened because Eala simply refused to let up. A 6-0 finish like that does not happen by accident. It happens because on every single point, she was sprinting, stretching, throwing her entire body at balls most players would have just let go. Wednesday, less than 48 hours later, she is on center court in Toronto facing Alicia Parks, the American crowd favorite, in front of a packed house that organizers had specifically rescheduled into a night session because demand to see her play was that high. Stop and think about that for 1 second. A tournament rearranged its entire schedule around one player. That does not happen to a tired athlete quietly running out of steam. That happens to a phenomenon. She won that match 6-1, 4-6, 6-2, 3 sets. Physical, back and forth, absolutely draining tennis, against a hard-hitting opponent on her home continent. Here is a question worth sitting with for a second. If her body was already running on fumes from Washington, how does she still find the legs to win a third set against a dangerous American opponent in a hostile atmosphere, on almost no recovery time at all? But the schedule did not stop there either. Thursday, less than 24 hours after that grueling 3-set win, she is back on court again. This time in doubles, standing next to Venus Williams, a 7-time Grand Slam champion, facing off against Ludmila Samsonova and Miyu Kato on center court. Under the lights, in front of a crowd that showed up specifically excited to watch this pairing, less than 24 hours. Singles one night, doubles the very next. At the WTA 1000 level, where every single match is a physical war against some of the fittest athletes anywhere in the sport. Ask any professional athlete what 24 hours of recovery feels like after a 3-set battle, and they will all tell you the exact same thing. It is not enough. Not for the legs, not for the joints. Not for a nervous system that needs real time to reset after that kind of intensity. So here is the question that should really be bothering you now. Why would anyone push a 21-year-old body through a workload like that, especially right after the most important win of her entire career? Was this the tournament's call? Was this Eala's own decision? Was this her team pushing too hard, too fast, trying to chase momentum before it slipped away? Because here is what makes this even more complicated. She did not have to say yes to that doubles match. She could have withdrawn at any point. She could have protected her body and focused everything she had on her singles run, especially with the US Open looming just weeks away, a tournament where she has already made deep runs before, where the pressure and the expectations on her are only climbing higher. Instead, she chose to add more matches, more strain on her body, more risk. And fans watching from home noticed exactly what was happening. Clips of her walking a little slower between points started circulating everywhere. People pointed out longer pauses before her serve. Some fans openly worried in the comments that this pace simply could not last. That somewhere between Washington and Toronto, her body was going to send a signal she would not be able to ignore. At this point, the story feels like it is heading toward one of two places. Either she is about to break down under the weight of an impossible schedule, or something is happening here that nobody outside her inner circle fully understands yet. Because when you lay every piece of this puzzle side by side, the exhaustion, the back-to-back matches, the refusal to ever slow down, it stops looking like poor planning. It starts looking like a decision that only makes sense if there is a reason powerful enough to justify all of that risk. And that reason is about to completely change the way you see this entire week. Here is where everything you just watched starts to look completely different. What if the exhaustion was never really the story? What if the real story was a choice, made with full knowledge of the cost? Because something mattered to her more than rest ever could. Go back to that doubles match. The one that made 0 sense on paper. 21 hours after a brutal 3-set singles win, she walks back onto center court, this time standing beside a woman who has won 7 Grand Slam singles titles and multiple Olympic gold medals. A woman who was already a legend of the sport before Alex Eala was even born. Venus Williams did not need this match, not at this stage of her career. Every single appearance she makes now is a choice, not an obligation, and she chose Eala. Twice. First at the Bad Homburg Open on grass, where the two of them reached the quarterfinals together in their very first tournament as a pair. And now again in Toronto, after their planned reunion in Washington quietly fell apart and Williams ended up partnering with someone else instead. So ask yourself this: why would a 7-time Grand Slam champion, someone who can choose literally any partner on the entire tour, keep coming back to a 21-year-old who just survived the most exhausting week of her career? Here is what Eala said when someone finally asked her about it. Her answer was simple: "I have so much respect for Venus. I am so grateful for every opportunity that I have to be around her, to learn from her, to hit with her." Read that again, slowly. She did not say I wanted the ranking points. She did not say I needed the match practice. She said to learn from her, to be around her. That is not the language of someone chasing exhaustion just to fill out a schedule. That is the language of someone who understands exactly what she is standing next to. Something rare, something that will not be there forever, and she is choosing to soak up every single second of it while she still can. And Venus said something just as telling before the tournament even began. "We had a great start. We played really well, hoping to get a chance to play with her again, hoping to get a chance. A living legend, hoping for more time on court with a rookie who just turned 21. This is the twist. What looked like poor scheduling, what looked like a young athlete being pushed way past her limits by a brutal tour calendar, was actually a decision Eala made herself, with her eyes wide open. She had every reason in the world to say no. She could have protected her body. She could have focused only on singles, especially with the US Open only weeks away. Instead, she walked onto that doubles court anyway. Think of it this way. Imagine getting the chance to learn from the single greatest mentor in your entire field, but only for a handful of sessions scattered across the whole year, sessions that could stop existing at any moment. Would you skip one of them to rest up? Or would you show up completely exhausted and take every single minute you could get? That is the choice Eala made, not because she had to, because the opportunity standing right in front of her was worth more than the discomfort of being tired. And if this reframe just hit you the way it hit us the first time we connected these pieces together, drop a comment and tell us honestly, do you think this was the right call? Would you have made the exact same choice at 21 years old, with a legend standing right beside you, or would you have protected your body first and walked away? Because here is the thing. This was not the first time her respect for a moment outweighed the risk to her own body. And once you see that pattern, once you look closely at what happened right after this doubles match, the exhaustion story stops looking like a warning sign entirely. It starts looking like something else completely, something the numbers are about to prove for us. Let's put all the pieces together now, because the proof here is not just in what she said, it is in what actually happened next. Remember the question we opened with. How is she still standing? Here is your answer, and it comes from 3 separate places that all point in the exact same direction. First, look at the ticket demand. Tournament director Carl Hale did not just casually slot Eala into a convenient time. He explained publicly that unusually high ticket demand for her specifically pushed organizers to hand her a prime spot in the night session on center court ahead of players with far more tour experience than she has. That decision was not made because she looked tired. It was made because fans were buying tickets specifically to watch her play, exhausted or not. That is not the profile of an athlete quietly falling apart under an unsustainable schedule. That is the profile of an athlete whose presence alone is now worth more to a tournament than almost anyone else in the entire draw. Second, look at what Hale said about the doubles pairing itself. We know our fans will be incredibly excited to see Venus and Alexandra team up in doubles. Venus is a legend of the sport, while Alexandra's popularity continues to soar, as does her level on court. Read that part again carefully. Her popularity continues to soar, as does her level on court, not despite the schedule. Alongside it, the tournament itself is telling you her performance was not crumbling under the weight of exhaustion. It was climbing. Third, and this is the detail almost nobody watching her matches this week actually caught, she did not just barely survive that 3-set win over Alicia Parks on 48 hours of rest. She dominated the first set 6-1 against a hard-hitting American in a hostile atmosphere. Immediately after the most demanding tournament of her career, she came out and won the opening set by 5 full games. That is not how an athlete running on empty starts a match. That is how an athlete whose conditioning and mental preparation were built specifically to survive weeks exactly like this one starts a match. Now go back to that opening image. The one this whole story started with, her standing on center court, fans on their feet, everything looking like the peak of a dream, while her body should have been resting somewhere far away from all of it. Here is what we know now that we did not know then. That moment was never an accident of scheduling. It was never a mistake by her team. It was the direct result of a choice she made again and again throughout that entire week. Choose the doubles match with Venus over rest. Choose the fight in the third set over protecting her leg. Choose the opportunity right in front of her over the comfort of stepping back and playing it safe. And here is the insight almost nobody talking about her run this week has actually connected. This is not the first time in her career she has done this. Her entire path from the Rafa Nadal Academy, through years without a single tour title to her name, through a Miami breakthrough that still was not enough to silence the doubters, all the way to Washington, has followed the exact same pattern. She has never once chosen the easier path when a harder one offered more growth. The exhaustion everyone worried about while watching those clips online was never a warning sign of a career about to break. It was the visible cost of a mindset that has been quietly building toward exactly this moment for years. So, the picture is almost complete now. We know why she pushed through. We know it was a choice, not a mistake. We know the tournament itself validated that choice by handing her the biggest stage it had to offer. What is left now is the only question that actually matters. What does she do with all of this momentum next? The answer to that opening question turns out to be simpler than it seemed 20 minutes ago. She is still standing because she chose to be. Every match, every extra hour on court, every single time she said yes when rest would have been the easier answer, that is what got her here. But this is not where her story ends. This is only where it turns into something much bigger than one exhausting week in Toronto. Because right now, across the entire WTA Tour, there is a shift happening. For years, the conversation Swiatek, Sabalenka, Goff. The next generation everyone expected to define this era. What nobody fully accounted for was a 21-year-old from the Philippines trained at the very same academy that shaped one of the greatest athletes in history, quietly building a resume that now includes a WTA title, a top 20 ranking, wins over players ranked inside the top 25, and a level of fan demand strong enough to make an entire tournament rearrange its own schedule around her. That is not a small story anymore. That is a signal. And here is the question nobody can answer yet. Not us, not the commentators, not even her own team with any real certainty. Can this pace actually continue? The US Open is just weeks away on a surface where she has already produced some of the biggest moments of her career. The very same body that pushed through Washington and Toronto back-to-back is about to be tested again on the biggest stage tennis has to offer, in front of the loudest crowd of the entire year. Does the choice that carried her this far carry her through that too? Or does the cost of this week finally catch up with her when the stakes climb even higher? Nobody watching her right now truly knows the answer, and that uncertainty is exactly what makes the next few weeks so worth paying attention to. If you want to see exactly how this plays out, if you want to be there the moment the answer to that question finally reveals itself, this is the story to follow. Because whatever happens at the US Open is going to tell us something we simply cannot know yet. Whether this was the week a rising star proved she truly belonged at the very top, or the week that pushed her one match too far. Subscribe now, because when that answer finally comes, you are going to want to be watching when it happens.